They told me for years there was no money in podcasting. Well, they were all wrong.
So did you have a tagline for screen? Because I had Good Morning New York off of Good Morning Vietnam. Did you have something that is kind of like your staple?
I did. I don't know if it was really kind of like movie based like yours, but I would always say, "What's going on, screeners?" And at the end, I would always say, "Keep on screening, screeners,"
which you still do.
Yeah, I still do it on my podcast.
Do.
Yeah, I still do it. I always want to try to have a little kind of, like you said, like pizzazz to it. Just kind of, again, just kind of bring audiences in to kind of feel like they're a part of it in a way, and like they're part of a group and a family. So I wanted to keep on doing that with my podcast, like you said, because just to keep that going.
Yeah, because someone who does podcasts, like, Ambiguous podcasters, and I speak to people who do podcasts or want to do podcasts all the time, they tell me, how do you structure a show? Right? Like, for that Good Morning New York, it honestly might have been completely organic. I don't think I thought of something like that, because that's not typically my style. Like, I'll take something, and if it works, I'll do it again, and then I'll run with it.
Yeah.
So, like, my podcast I did with my friend Nash, it was called You Mad Bro. That's one that doesn't exist anymore. And since it's, covering things that the internet's mad about, so I'd start off the podcast going, all right, everyone settle down. The idea is they're coming in all pissed off, so let's just settle down.
Right.
And, that's something I did once, and then I just kept doing. But I didn't plan that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It just happened. So, like, do you do that for either for the screening room or, like, even your own podcast, like, just keep on screening, you took that from screening room, but do you also plan organically, or is this kind of very rigid?
It is organic in the way that, like, whenever I'm trying to create something, it comes to me, and then I utilize it throughout every single one of my podcasts. So it's kind of a mixture of both, where it is kind of planned out, but at the same time, I try to make it organic as well. Like, or like if something else kind of comes up, or if I want to kind of switch it up, I'll try to switch up certain words or whatnot. But I always want to, especially at the ending, I always say keep on screening. In the beginning, I just kind of like just greet people. Like, it's just like, hey, everyone, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, welcome. Like, here, like, come enjoy, listen to this stuff. So it's a mixture of both, really.
Because the only thing I actually scripted was like the Willie T Top 10. It was like whatever we called it. It was every week we had a top 10 list of something. And I was like, okay, this is a scripted segment. I want to make it funny. I'm not that good at improv, right? It's like I wish I had those, because I would cut all those up, because I forget what the list was, but some of them I just had everyone dying.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. I couldn't remember what it was, but it was just that one liner that you don't think it's gonna work, and then it just works.
Wow, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's just, if it goes, it goes, really. And I will say, like, for my podcast, like, the only things that are really scripted are the beginning and the end, when I'm like introing, being like, hey, like, what's going on, and then kind of like saying like, this is what I'm doing, like, these are the topics that we're going to be covering. I do a few notes, but even that, I'm just kind of like off the cuff, like whatever's on my mind. Like, I'll pretend to look at my notes that I do, but then at the same time, my brain's just running like it does, because it's wired to. It's like, what you're saying, what you're doing at this point, because you've been doing it for a while. So I try to be as creative as possible with that, in that kind of a way.
Yeah, I mean, most of my podcasts are off the cuff. There's certain guests. Like, I talked to someone yesterday who I don't actually know personally, but I've actually met in person. But like, I had a list of questions just in case, because there was a social media manager. It's like, okay, I want to ask a bunch of questions on social media,
right?
But like, I also don't know this person, so I don't want to go in cold and I'm stuck.
Right, yeah.
So like, I had those questions. I'm lucky. I'm happy I didn't go to them most of the time, because the old podcasts, like I think 1 through 10 of this podcast, like I had all my questions written out. Like, I also have a bunch of questions that I ask off the top of my head, because that's just what happens.
Right.
But most of them were scripted out, and the screening room itself, like the segment beat by beat, was scripted. So this block we're talking this movie, this block we're talking that movie, this block we're talking that movie. I had notes of that movie I watched. But other than that,
you just kind of go off the cuff a little bit and just kind of like roll with it. And I think someone like you and other people that I know, they're great at like improv, like that improvisation, where they're just able to kind of like riff it off, like just kind of come up with whatever's on their mind while they're recording. For me, I got to be able to at least, again, like have some kind of structure in that sense, being like, okay, like I know what I'm talking about here. And I took that off of screening room to kind of just have some kind of structure, just to kind of be like, okay, this is like A, B, and C of what we're covering. But then everything else is kind of like, just fill it in. It's like a basic skeleton. I like to think of it. It's like, You've got the skeleton, and then you fill everything else in as you kind of go, basically.